Episode 41 really moved me, because in some moments, Tu Tien wasn't just searching for her parents, she was healing herself too. I can't wait to share it with you. Early in the morning, Jack arrived at a small roadside cafe where his boss had asked to meet. The air was tense, but his boss's eyes still carried a sense of trust. Looking Jack straight in the eye, the boss said calmly, "I know you're a talented engineer, hard-working and honest, but this situation, the company needs a clear answer. If you can't prove your innocence, I'm afraid we'll have to terminate the contract and demand compensation." Jack remained composed and replied firmly, "I've been framed. I've asked the authorities to investigate. I just need more time to gather evidence." The boss nodded after a long pause. "I'll give you a little more time. Don't give up, Jack. Hold on to your faith." Jack gripped his glass tightly, his eyes filled with resolve. "Thank you. I will get to the bottom of this." At the same time, on a small road near a wooden bridge, Tu Tien stood waiting for Jack. She wore her familiar yellow shirt, gently holding the strap of her backpack, her eyes filled with a mix of excitement and worry. Today marked the beginning of her journey to search for the family she'd been separated from for so many years. Jack drove up, stepped out and opened the door for her. "Hop in, everything's ready." Tu Tien smiled softly, nodded and got in. She whispered, "I wonder if we'll find them this time." Jack placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll try our best. I believe you'll see them again." The car rolled along winding roads through the mountains and forests, carrying silent hopes and a growing bond with every passing mile. After a long journey, they arrived at Na village, a small community nestled in a valley. They were brought to meet Uncle Ko, the village elder, now over 80, his hair silver but his eyes still sharp. When Jack introduced them and Tu Tien shared her story of being separated from her family, the elder studied her in silence for a long moment. "Uncle," Jack began, "we came here hoping you might help confirm her parents' identity, or at least give us some clue." The elder nodded, his gaze growing thoughtful. "I'll try to remember. This was long ago, but if you really are that child from back then, there may be someone who knows something." Inside a cozy stilt house deep in the forest, Jack and Tu Tien sat across from Uncle Ko, his weathered face marked by time. Jack spoke gently. "We're hoping you might remember anything, maybe a lost child from about 20 years ago, or a couple who used to live in the high mountains." Uncle Ko was quiet for a while, then spoke slowly. "There was a blind couple. They lived a nomadic life up on Phuc mountain, poor but very kind. I remember they once found a child at the base of the mountain and took her in, but after that no one heard anything about them. They were already old at the time, probably in their 50s or 60s by now, if they're still alive." Tu Tien was stunned, tears rolling down her cheeks. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap, sobbing softly. "Even if it's just a sliver of hope, I want to follow it to the very end." Seeing this, Uncle Ko gently placed a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "Tomorrow is market day. Many people from the mountain villages will come down. Someone might remember that blind couple. Stay the night, and I'll take you to the market in the morning." That evening, Jack and Tu Tien were warmly welcomed by Uncle Ko's family, his wife and son. Around the crackling fire, everyone pitched in to prepare dinner. Jack peeled bamboo shoots while Tu Tien tended the fire. They cooked simple yet heartwarming dishes: stir-fried sour bamboo shoots, boiled forest greens, cured pork, and fragrant corn wine. During dinner, Uncle Ko shared stories of the old days. Back then, there were no roads, just dense jungle and wild animals. People were few, but bonds were strong. Now that there are roads to the village, life's not as hard. Tu Tien listened intently, her eyes softened after earlier tears. Jack took the chance to call his mum. "I'm staying with the village elder tonight. We'll go to the market tomorrow to look for more leads." "Don't worry, Mum, I'm okay." After hanging up, he gently took Tu Tien's hand. "Don't worry. We're going to find your family." Tu Tien nodded, leaning against Jack's shoulder, her eyes shimmering with faith, though her heart was still full of anxious hope. The next morning, Jack and Tu Tien said goodbye to Uncle Ko and his family. Before they left, he reminded them, "The market will be crowded today. Maybe someone there will remember that blind couple. Just ask around." The two thanked him and headed down the mountain, blending into the crowd flocking toward the lively market. Tu Tien carried fragile hope in her heart, stopping to speak with elderly villagers whose faces bore the marks of time. Jack left no one out, but everyone shook their heads. No one remembered a blind couple living on the mountaintop years ago. After circling the market, they sat at a small roadside stall, eyes shadowed by disappointment. Tu Tien sighed. Maybe they don't live here anymore. Jack gently squeezed her hand. There's still the grassy hill Uncle Ko mentioned. Let's check that next. Since the road wasn't suitable for a car, they borrowed a motorbike from someone in the village, packed a few essentials, and planned to stay with a local family if needed. The road up to the hill was quiet, winding through the woods, with chilly winds brushing against their shoulders, but the warmth of each other's presence kept them going. Midway, they stopped on a high patch of earth, laid out a cloth, and shared sticky rice in bamboo tubes, snacks, and a bottle of water. Tu Tien leaned on Jack's shoulder and whispered, "I wouldn't be angry if my parents abandoned me because they were too poor. I just hope they're alive and at peace." Jack looked at her tenderly. "I want to find them, so I can ask for permission to marry you properly. To me, this is more than a journey, it's a promise." Tu Tien didn't reply. She simply rested her head against his shoulder a little longer. They both looked out toward the distant hills, the grassy hills still hidden behind the mountains ahead. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear: no matter how hard the road, they weren't giving up. Jack and Tu Tien continued their journey. They drove the motorbike onto the main road, planning to buy a few more supplies and speak with more elders about Tu Tien's parents. The road ahead was uncertain, but neither of them showed any sign of discouragement. If no one had answers, they planned to ask for help from the local authorities or the village head. On the way, Tu Tien caught sight of some mountain children playing by the roadside. Their bare feet were purple from the cold, their clothes tattered and thin. Her heart clenched. Jack tightened his grip on the handlebars but said nothing, though his eyes dimmed with emotion. When they reached the market, it was noisy and chaotic. The air was filled with vendors shouting, people laughing, and neighbors calling to each other. They asked several elderly people, but again, no one remembered a blind couple. Finally, when they approached an old woman selling bamboo boots, she nodded gently. "In Jiangchu Fin village, I think there's a blind person. Haven't seen them in a long time. A few years ago they used to come down to the market, but now, who knows if they're still alive or not." She said if they wanted to look, they'd have to go up the village. The blind person lived in seclusion in the mountains and rarely spoke with outsiders. Tu Tien gripped Jack's hand, her eyes a mixture of joy and worry. "At least it's a lead," Jack said softly. "We'll head to that village tomorrow." Before leaving the market, Jack stopped by a stall and bought wool socks, knit hats, and some sweet pastries. Tu Tien asked, "Why are you buying so much?" Jack smiled. "For the kids in the village. It's probably freezing up there." Tu Tien looked at him with gentle eyes, then picked up a grey knit scarf and pressed it into his hands. "And what about you? You need one too. We've got a long way to go. If you catch a cold, who's going to take me the rest of the way?" Jack chuckled, about to protest, but seeing her determined face, he nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to my future wife." Standing in the middle of the bustling crowd, their arms full of bags, they felt warm, not just from the clothes, but from the kindness they shared and the love growing quietly between them. Jack and Tu Tien stopped their bike in front of the cultural house in Jiangchufin village. The village head warmly welcomed them. When Jack asked about a blind couple who might have adopted a child, the man fell silent, then nodded thoughtfully. "There are two blind people in this village. One is a widow who lives alone. Her husband passed long ago. The other is a woman in her 40s, but her husband isn't blind. I'll take you to meet them." The blind widow lived in an old wooden house surrounded by bundles of dried corn. When she saw Tu Tien, she started to cry. "I had a daughter once, but she passed away. She lost hearing in one ear when she was little. This girl isn't her." Her voice trembled. Tu Tien stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, but she still bowed and thanked her. Jack quietly placed some money, snacks, and warm socks into the woman's hands, a silent gesture of comfort. Not ready to give up, they went to the other woman's house. It was a tin-roofed home in a cold valley. The blind woman was regularly helped by neighbors. She confirmed, "I've been blind since I was a child, but I've never lost or adopted any child." Her husband nodded in agreement. Jack and Tu Tien said nothing more. They simply offered a small gift and quietly left. On the way back down the mountain, Tu Tien couldn't hold in her feelings any longer. She sobbed, her eyes clouded with despair. "Maybe. I don't really have a family. If I did, they would have looked for me long ago." Jack pulled her close, gently stroking her hair. "That's not true. Maybe they're somewhere out there thinking of you, but they just don't know how to find you. Let's keep going, okay?" As evening fell over the mountain ridge, the last light of day faded behind the trees. Through a thin veil of mist on the winding path, Jack and Tu Tien stopped by a hillside when they saw a group of children playing, their laughter ringing out like wind chimes. Their bare feet stepped on the cold earth, cheeks glowing pink from the chill, but their eyes sparkled with innocence. Jack opened a bag and handed out the still warm pastries to the kids with a soft smile. Tu Tien rummaged through her backpack, carefully picking out pairs of wool socks and knit hats she had prepared earlier. She knelt down, handing each child a gift, gently smoothing their hair as if comforting the child within her own heart. The children squealed with delight, their faces lighting up like little suns in the cold highland air. Though the journey to find her family was still filled with uncertainty, that moment warmed Tu Tien's heart. Maybe love wasn't just about being found. It was also about the quiet giving between two people, holding hands through the dust and storms of life. Though she hadn't found her parents yet, Tu Tien realized something else. On the road to searching, she could still bring warmth to others and receive an unconditional love from Jack in return.
Một trong một số phận bất hạnh. Ngày cô về nhà chồng, cô cũng từng e thẹn bước qua bậc cửa này mang theo bao ước mơ về một mái ấm. Nhưng hôm nay cũng chính bậc cửa đó cô phải rời đi trong tủi nhục, trong sự lạnh lùng của người chồng. Trong ánh mắt khinh bỉ của cả gia đình chồng, cô muốn phản kháng, muốn hồi chiến rằng anh ta còn chút tình nghĩa nào dành cho cô không. Nhưng rồi cô nhận ra điều đó chẳng còn quan trọng nữa. Cô chỉ là một món đồ bị vứt đi, bị thay thế bởi một người khác. Từ Tiên bước ra khỏi căn nhà đã từng là tổ ấm của mình, bước chân cô nặng nề như có ai đó trói chặt. Trời không mưa như lòng cô bão tố, những giọt nước mắt nặng chát lăn nhài trên má hòa vào nỗi đau đớn cùng của một người phụ nữ bị phản bội. Cô chẳng mang gì ngoài bộ quần áo cũ kỹ, trái tim vỡ nát. Bóng lưng cô nhỏ bé đơn độc giữa con đường làng quen thuộc, nhưng giờ đây lại xa lạ vô cùng. Cô không biết mình sẽ đi đâu, sẽ làm gì. Tất cả những gì cô từng có, từng gìn giữ suốt năm qua giờ đây chẳng còn thuộc về cô nữa. Có lẽ điều đau đớn nhất không phải là bị đuổi khỏi nhà, mà nhận ra rằng mình chưa bao giờ thực sự được xem là một phần của nơi đó. Cô đã từng cố gắng, từng nhẫn nhịn, nhưng rốt cuộc cô vẫn chỉ là người dân trong chính gia đình chồng mình.